Welcome, everyone, as always, to Haven of Horror. I'm Subject. We've got Noah and Robert with us, and tonight we are discussing the 1986 cult classic. I think is still a fair term to use for this one.
Mm.
From Beyond, starring Jeffrey Combs, Barbara Crampton, and my boy Ken Foree. One of the only other movies that I've seen him in from this time period. He should have been in more movies, is the moral of that story.
True.
So Robert, tell us about From Beyond.
Oh no, I wasn't prepared for this.
That's why I picked you.
It's a movie about scientists that do a thing that goes wrong. And the moral of the story is don't do the thing that's really dangerous. No, it's
don't
it's from the
tamper
same...
with God.
Yeah, exactly. It's based on an H.P. Lovecraft story. It's from the same team, like writers, director, a couple actors from Reanimator the year prior. And Reanimator is a much better known movie, but this movie is about people experimenting with their brains, and the result is their pineal gland grows, and which we'll get into details what that does to them later. But what it's really about is they're able to see into this other dimension with these other creatures that are really dangerous and do bad things. This is a quintessential body horror movie. I don't know if I'd recommend this to be anyone's first body horror movie, but there's a lot of gooey stuff. It's very simple, but it's great. It's really enjoyable. Jeffrey Combs plays, of course, the scientist who's working with his teacher. I don't know if they're just roommates, but he's with a more well-known, respected scientist, Dr. Pretorius. A nice little nod to Bride of Frankenstein. And Dr. Pretorius ends up in this other dimension and becomes one of the creatures. But everyone in the real world thinks that Jeffrey Combs' character just killed him, and now they think he's insane. So Barbara Crampton plays a doctor who comes in to help him. That's the setup.
We just need a summary. We don't need the entire film, but thank you.
Appreciate
I
how
think I covered up.
Yeah,
that's the review, everybody.
So as Robert said, this is about a scientist who creates a resonator, which stimulates the pineal gland. Which I don't know if this just proves that the American education system sucks, but I don't know what that is.
I know I've heard the word in school.
I think the American education system does suck regardless.
Austin says this is also the third in a trilogy. What's the other two? But yeah, so they turn on this machine.
Duology, but yeah.
Oh, I thought it was just a one-off.
Well, I think he means like as a spiritual successor to Reanimator.
This and Reanimator, I always see mentioned together is what I mean.
Yeah, we need clarification. Day Ghost.
Noah moved to Vice City. Yeah, why'd you move to Vice City? What the hell?
It's the weather.
Oh, okay. But yeah, so Edward Pretorius develops this machine. They start seeing these strange creatures, and then Pretorius is murdered. And then Crawford is... God damn it. Crawford is sent to...
saw the joke.
Sent to a mental institution. And the Dago says, from bed, from bath, and from beyond. When the police arrive, they find Pretorius decapitated, yet no blood, and he's arrested. Which is kind of the initial setup for the movie, which is interesting because you would think that would be the movie as them making this machine. But that's already happened. The movie is the fallout of them making that machine.
Yeah.
Well, and usually in a movie like this, they try to play with your expectations like, oh, is this guy crazy or did he actually see that? They'll usually play that up for like a half hour of, is this guy crazy or is this thing actually real? No, this movie's very upfront in the first 2 minutes that yes, this is an insane sci-fi movie. This is not a movie where you, the audience, are meant to doubt this guy's sanity.
Well, and I mean, that's Reanimator does the same thing.
I was just about to say, yeah, like both of those movies open in a way where it's like, this is what it is. This is what you're in for. If you're not a fan of that, then stop watching.
Yeah, Stuart Gordon, who directed this movie, seems very much like a guy that's like, he's here to make a movie to show you He's not here to challenge you, or at least not in that way, or like try to trick you. It's no, I'm gonna give you this. You decide what to do with it. So that's when we're introduced to Catherine McMichaels, played by the wonderful Barbara Crampton. She's awesome in this.
From, our shopping mall review. He was also in that.
Yeah, and she's very hammy and fun in that movie, but here it's like proof, like, no, she's like a really good actress.
She's a good actress.
Like, she has a lot of range she has to hit in this movie, and she's great.
Yeah, no, she's great. And she proposes taking him back to the house to recreate the experiment to see exactly what happened, which I don't know if someone in their right mind would A, recommend, or B, approve.
Yeah.
Especially since she seems like pretty sincere in believing him. And when he tells her that this thing bit Pretorius's head off like a gingerbread man, maybe don't turn on the thing. Like, maybe this is a bad idea.
His delivery of like a gingerbread man is hysterical. There's some really funny line deliveries in this movie, and I think that helps with the kind of feel of this movie. The Day Ghost does say there's an unofficial trilogy of Reanimator from Beyond and Castle Freak. Yeah, because that has Jeffrey Combs and Barbara Crampton in it, and they're all directed by Stuart Gordon.
Yeah,
okay.
Although
I haven't heard of that last one, but
yeah, I've heard it's great. That's from the 90s. I think, although, except this and Reanimator are based on H.P. Lovecraft stories. I don't think that one is. I think Castle Freak is just an original film. But Claire, correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm not
in
sure.
the comments.
But yeah, Castle Freak is that one I sent you. I was like, oh, I gotta watch this because I never heard of it.
Yeah, I still need to watch that.
So they go along with it, and then we introduce to my favorite character in the movie, but I'm biased. Bubba. That's the only name we're giving is Bubba. He's so Bubba. Good. He's the smartest person in this movie.
Yep.
Yeah, he is. He's from the beginning. He's like, yeah, we should not do that again. We should get out of here. He has the most sense out of all of them.
So they turn on the machine and he gets bitten. Did you guys expect that bite to do something? Like we were going to get some kind of weird body horror with that?
You typically would. I could see Torgo.
Well, I didn't really, because when Jeffrey Combs gets bit at the beginning, we didn't really do anything with that afterwards.
That's true, but I'd also argue this movie's inconsistent with its own rules.
It is, but it's surprisingly consistent, like with scars and damage that both the main characters take and the progression of Pretorius, our villain, as a monster. So, I mean, we do linger on that scar on his cheek for a while. So I get what you're saying, like how you'd expect that to spread or turn into something else. Like that's usually what you
do
in a movie like this.
I'm talking about when the squid bites him on the arm.
Oh, I thought you were talking about when Jeffrey Combs was bitten in the opening.
No,
he's bitten on his face. And then Ken Foray's bitten on the arm later.
Robert, buddy, we were just talking about Bubba. Why would I go back to the beginning?
We're talking about Bubba.
Yeah, but a bite thing had already happened earlier.
Austin says Castle Freak is original, but it's always lumped in as one of the best Lovecraftian films. Okay. I like stuff like The Thing and The Mouth of Madness. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
I'll have to watch it. But anyway, he gets bit, they get attacked, and you get your first glimpse at what Praetorian has become. And our first great special effect is just like so like goopy, and like then he pulls his face off. It's awesome.
Yeah. Gets a big handprint on his shoulder.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to. I can't find it now. I want to give a shout out to whoever did the special effects in this, but I can't find it. I think all of the effects for the most part are great, and we'll get into some of the more like crazier effects soon.
They're definitely better than the effects in Reanimators, so I don't know if that's the same team or if they got someone else to do the effects on this movie.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. the effects wise, this is definitely a big step up from Reanimator. It's just so much more grotesque and like, crazy. I think this movie goes from 0 to 11 quicker than Reanimator does from what I remember about that movie.
So to be fair, this movie had over double the budget of Reanimator.
Yeah.
Sure.
According to Wiki, Reanimator was made from anywhere from 900,000 to about 1.2 million. And From Beyond had a budget of like $4,500. So
Okay.
step up, you get better effects.
Yeah, that does make sense. It's interesting though, because Reanimator, I think, continues to be the more well-known movie of the two. Although I do think this movie does deserve just as much recognition as Reanimator, because this movie is insane, and I loved almost every second of it.
Well, I was talking to Austin because he prefers this to Reanimator, and I love Reanimator a lot. But I would need to rewatch it to compare. But just after a viewing of this, I'm like, I might also like this more than Reanimator.
Yeah, no, I'd have to watch it again. I'd have to rewatch Reanimator because it's been a while since I've watched that. I think just to do our Shudder Shuffle on that back when we reviewed that movie. So I'd have to compare them, but I don't know. I think they're pretty on par for me. But because this is more recently in my head, maybe I prefer this.
Yeah, they're both very good, and not to get sidetracked on Reanimator for too long, but there's definitely a difference in tone. Like, I don't remember if it was like the director or the writer or the producer. Somebody who worked on Reanimator, like there were early test screenings of it where people were laughing when they weren't supposed to. Like the scene with the cats, the big one, like that's not meant to be funny, but it's just funny. And then there's other scenes in that movie that are clearly very comedic, where it's like, okay, I don't know if this was a reshoot or just Jeffrey Combs improvising, but there's funny parts of that movie that are meant to be funny, and then there's other parts where you're laughing at it more than you are laughing with it, even though you're still having a great time, and Reanimator's awesome. This movie, would you guys agree, is less silly? Like, it's still campy, it's still a big B movie, but I wouldn't call this like a comedy the way Reanimator is. Like, parts are funny, but
it's definitely more of a
plays everything very
movie
seriously.
Intentionally.
Yeah.
So rewinding back to the special effects, apparently 4 different special effects teams worked on the effects. According to the producer, the production ran out of money before the effects on the finale could be finished. That makes sense because the finale, I think, definitely has some of the weaker special effect shots, but they made it work.
Yeah,
I think they still made it work for what they have.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think this movie has a much more serious tone. I also think it's way more disturbing, like legitimately disturbing than Reanimator, because Reanimator is a lot more campy. In this movie, some of the like effect shots were so grotesque. It is pretty effective body horror.
Yeah. So they shut off the machine, and like I said, you get that cool effect with Praetorius, and like Jeffrey Combs puts his hand on his shoulder, and there's like an indent left in his shoulder from where he touched it, and then he like rips his face off, and it's like, okay, now you're just showing off, but you know what?
Yeah.
What you're showing off is awesome, so I'll allow it.
Exactly.
They finally shut off the machine, and then for some reason, Catherine wants to turn it back on again, and this is where it gets a little inconsistent because she wants to turn it on. And I feel like it's just to further the plot of the film. And then so when she does turn it on, then she's like, oh, wait, I made a mistake. I have to turn it back off. But then for some reason, they can't turn it off at the switch. Like for no real reason other than they need to get somebody down in the basement for that effect. Did you guys have that at all?
I think the idea is the stronger Pretorius gets, and the more they tap into that world, the more he has like control of the real world, like being able to stop the switch or reconnect the wires stuff. I might be giving the movie too much credit, but that was my interpretation of it. Rewatching.
Well, because they have that line where they say the name of the movie, where it's like he's returning on the machine from beyond.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well,
so yeah, no, I buy it.
I also struggle with like, can I criticize it for that when you're dealing with things that may not make sense in our logic?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, since we're on Catherine, this is kind of a question. We don't need to be on this too long, but like, who do you guys consider like our trio just like the protagonists? Because they each kind of have I mean, obviously one isn't around the whole movie, but they each kind of have a different arc. Like Jeffrey Combs is obviously our main character at the start, but then he goes a certain way, and then she's like almost kind of the hero in the finale, but not really. But she also makes a lot of mistakes and is very flawed, which like I don't know, how sympathetic do you guys find Catherine? Because she makes a lot of mistakes. And there's an interesting question that's brought up about like how much of this is for the good of mankind and how much is this altruistic or just her own like selfish, ambitious reasons? Because she makes a lot of questionable choices.
Right. I wouldn't find her completely sympathetic, but I do understand her motivations.
Yeah, with her father.
Because it's partly because part of it is, trying to better mankind and trying to cure schizophrenia is what she's trying to do. But I also think she's using a lot of that as an excuse because it's clear that she's getting addicted to it. And,
that's
you
well,
have that
Bubba even says that you're acting like a junkie.
Yeah, Bubba even says you're addicted. So no, I mean, like, I don't find her completely sympathetic, but I do find what she has to do like pretty interesting and compelling to watch. And in terms of like the three of them, I'd say her and Jeffrey Combs, I'd say, are more so the protagonists. I mean, like, Bubba is there and like he's great, but I'd say he's, for like screen time wise and what he has to do, I'd say he's a little bit more of a secondary character. But Jeffrey Combs and Barbara Crampton are definitely like the two like dual protagonists, the leads.
See, when you brought up that question, my mind immediately went to something like Harry Potter, where you have a trio of unquestionably these are like the leads. So I very much watched this as a triple protagonist feature. I don't know what you would call that.
Even though one is taken out before the third actor kicks in. And it's very sad.
It's too soon.
Yeah.
But we'll get there. As for am I synthetic, yes, because she is thrust into a situation that no human being could possibly begin to comprehend or understand.
That's true. Yeah.
And for most of it, arguably, she's just a victim of the whole thing.
Right.
Especially that third act, which I have questions about, but we'll get there.
No, I mean, like, I don't know how anyone would behave in that situation. And like we just talked about, most of it is she's clearly addicted to it. And, I think Jeffrey Combs even compares her to Dr. Pretorius. Like, he's seen the same, it started out from a good place, but he's seen the same kind of digression into madness.
Well, we do know about some of Pretorius's other intentions and hobbies. So it does lead you to just kind of speculate on like, the three of them and their own personal lives and motivations. Because Ken Foree is by far the most like rigid. He's like the least addicted of them. Who's just like, nope, this is bad. Get out. The
most normal guy of the three.
Yeah.
Well, and what I appreciate is that Pretorius isn't a guy that was driven insane by these experiments. They do a pretty good job of showing, no, there was something wrong with him before the machine. It just made it worse.
Yeah. I love it.
He's way less sympathetic than Barbara Crampton because he's clearly the villain, but there is still that similarity between the two.
Well, and I don't know if you guys had this, but when Jeffrey Combs has that speech about how he'd bring women over and like they'd have fine wine and fine food.
Yeah, it's very creepy.
Yeah.
It's really ambiguous if the screams were consensual. And that video that you see for a flash also doesn't really give you a good idea. So I think there's a reading to be said that some of that was not consensual, which makes it even the more horrifying.
And we have zero context for what happened to these women. Like, I don't think he was murdering them, but like we don't know. Like we have the context
for what the screaming was.
Yeah, for sure.
But I just mean, I don't know. I think it's ambiguous to the point where you can make a case that some of that stuff that he was doing, they did not like give permission or consent to.
But he's also
makes it even creepier.
Well, and he's also a really like respected, known doctor who could potentially, wave off any controversies or whatever. Like when this is a great scene when Kim Foray finds a sex tape from this guy, and he's just watching it. They're looking for Jeffrey Combs, but they're just watching it for a couple minutes. And it's like, wow, this guy's into messed up stuff. But
you could also read it as that machine had been working, and he, uses that to basically put them under his control, because we see what it does with Barbara Crampton later.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's, kind of a morally ambiguous line there as well. No, you got any thoughts? Oh, sorry.
Well, what I was gonna say about that scene though is when her reaction to it is interesting, because her reaction is Barbara Crampton is, I don't care, I just care about him. I don't care about his personal life. And you could read that a lot of different ways. Right. Like either she's just kind of ignoring this weird, sketchy thing because of her respect and a fanboy or fangirlness of this guy, or she's literally just pragmatic, like, no, I don't care about this guy's personal life. I just care about the science. I'm obsessed with the science. Like, you could read that either way, I think. Just how she reacts to that discovery.
I think it's coming from a place of she doesn't care about the man's personal life and she just cares about the science. But it's way before she realizes that maybe his science could have, corrupted him or just influenced that behavior in him. But even then, we're not given too much information on him, so it's just kind of left for us to infer based on that video and like what we hear about him from Jeffrey Combs.
Well, and it also just lets you speculate like how quote unquote normal this professional woman is, or what stuff she's secretly into, just given how quickly she is corrupted by this thing.
Right.
Compared to the two guys.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, she's the first to really succumb to it, as we'll see in the next scene, where she is the one that turns it back on. The first of
for
many
no scientific
mistakes.
reason.
Yeah, she just wants to feel whatever it is that doing this does to you. And then we get the next awesome special effect, and probably the one that gets to me the most, because I hate things with rows of teeth. And that goddamn worm is horrifying.
I hate that worm.
It's the worm from Dune, just a smaller version.
Yeah, but it's better because this is better than Dune.
Oh, I don't know about that. But...
Shots fired.
And then
shots fired, I guess?
I don't know if you guys had a laugh about this. So they're in the basement, and they're trapped because of this worm, but they have to turn off the fuse box. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh, that was my first kind of inconsistency where I was like, well, why do we have to do this? Because Jeffrey Combs puts his hand on the switch, and then the other guy just says, no, don't. And then he's just like, okay.
That was kind of weird. I was like, he couldn't have just pulled it.
The guy says not to, so your immediate thought is, I have to go destroy the fuse box.
Yeah, well, now I wish I could just rewatch the scene to see exactly how the beats play out. But with Jeffrey Combs and Barbara Crampton, I mean, there is a push and pull throughout the movie of like getting addicted to it and then pulling away, and like their real self or their other self getting. So yeah, I just don't remember exactly the beats of that. Because first when he's rushing to take out the fuse box, Ken Foray thinks that he's just running away and tackles him, and he's like, "No, we got to take out the fuse box." But yeah, I just don't remember the exact beats of.
Well, because remember, Praetorius has Barbara Crampton, and so he rushes over to flip the switch, and Praetorian says, "No, don't," and then he just goes, "Okay," and runs for the basement. And then I'm glad you brought that up, because it's probably the funniest scene of the movie, where he's running down the stairs and Ken Foray in his underwear tackles him.
When I was watching that, I was like, you don't have to tackle him. What are you doing? You don't know where he's going.
Yeah. And then they go into the basement and they meet the Dune worm. and this police officer with a fully loaded gun
Yes,
decides, I'm going to get a knife. What?
But why isn't this a GIF? Why isn't there a meme of Kim Foray running at the camera in tight, wet Speedos with a kitchen knife, screaming? It's amazing. Why isn't that clip gone viral yet?
Because this movie sadly never got that level of popularity that Reanimator did.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about this before, like the spectrum of cult film. Like The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing was a cult film, but you can't call that a cult film anymore. Like, it's just classic now.
No,
it's
just
too popular.
Yeah.
Reanimator's somewhere in the middle. Like, I mean, it's had a musical, I think. Like, a lot of people know Reanimators. Like, that's more popular. This is like textbook definition cult film to this day. Like, you need to be into this stuff to even know.
It's definitely on the lower end of the spectrum, where I'd say like, yeah, you could still call Reanimator a cult film, but that it's gained a larger following than something like this.
If you haven't seen it, like, you've heard about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I don't remember how I discovered this. I had a buddy at one of my old jobs that was super into this same kind of movies that I am, and he recommended it to me. That might be how I found it. I'm not sure, but yeah, no, like this is a movie you have to find.
Yeah, you have to hear about it.
Which that's cool that those still can exist. Like,
yeah,
I don't mean to sound like a hipster, but there's always something refreshing when you like find a movie and it's awesome, but nobody else knows about it.
Yeah, of course.
And so, and maybe part of that is so that you can show it to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a good thing we don't have a billion From Beyond sequels.
Yeah. Because, I mean, the Reanimator sequels sadly do not live up to the first one.
That's what I've heard.
There's some funny moments in that third one, but it's not very good.
I think you could do, if you did well, a legacy sequel to Reanimator with an older Herbert West. I think Jeffrey Combs would enjoy it. Like, is that something you want, or are you like, nah, leave that alone?
I want to say yes, but I have been burned by way too many of these legacy sequels.
I think I'm just
what
kind of
I
done
want,
with that trend.
What I want, and you know what? It's fine if we get off topic. It's whatever. What I want, as long as we don't, stay forever on off topic. What I want is the original pitch for Reanimator 4 all the way up until like 2008 with Herbert West in the White House. Just do that. Just make a Reanimator movie, but put it in the White House.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing.
That's what Gremlins 3 should do.
Yep.
And that's what annoys me about legacy sequels. Like Halloween. Halloween in 2018 is a legacy sequel. The last movie came out, and it's a remake, but, whatever. Came out, 6 or 7 years before? Just make another Halloween movie. Even if it's not in the remake continuity, just make a Halloween movie. Or just make a Scream movie.
Well, every Scream movie is canon. Those are very different things and very different conversations.
But Scream 5 is a legacy sequel. It's trying to make fun of them, but it's still a legacy sequel.
But
it was already kind of one of the first legacy sequels.
The Dago says, I couldn't even imagine a From Beyond sequel. I mean, I would have to imagine it just be something similar again.
I mean,
I'd say make another type of movie like this with Combs as opposed to making Reanimator the legacy sequel, like Suitable Flesh. Yeah, sure. Something like Suitable Flesh where it's those same kind of ideas and principles, but a new thing. And I'm not opposed to sequels to movies. Like, I think there's a Reanimator sequel in there somewhere. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we've found it, but
a sequel to From Beyond would be just pick up with Barbara Crampton in like an insane asylum or something, and then just go from there.
Yeah, we'll get to the ending later, but yeah, I mean, I haven't seen the Reanimator sequel, so I don't know if you'd have to retcon them, but like you could just do a new movie with Herbert. Like it doesn't need to be a soft remake. Just make a new one with Herbert West. Yeah, I'd watch that. This movie, if it got more attention or if any studio saw money in it, I think they just remake it at this point. It's one of the few that missed the whole remake boom of the mid 2000s. I mean, even Reanimator wasn't remade; that just got the couple of sequels
Thank
instead.
God,
but. Yeah, as so far this is untouched.
Because
thankfully so.
the thing with remaking this that I would have is that every cast member, I don't care who you cast, would feel like a downgrade.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
That's
Jeffrey
a good
Combs.
trio of
It's
actors.
not as good Jeffrey Combs, or oh, it's not as good Ken Foree, because you're not going to pump like megastar money into a remake of this. This movie didn't even make its money back at the box office the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
mean, and that's kind of my main point, that because this movie is on the lower end of the cult movie spectrum, I think it's good that means it's been saved from a bunch of sequels and remakes. So it's good to just have this movie, like you were saying, John. Just have this movie and just have to discover it and not have it be ruined by anything.
Or when there's like a good final movie in a series that didn't do well, so they just left it alone for a while. I can't think of a specific example, but that's happened several times, and it's like, well, that's kind of a relief that didn't do well because they at least stopped on a good one for a while. Like that's happened with a couple of franchises. I think
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Uh,
They stopped with New Nightmare for almost what?
Okay.
20 years.
Well, we got Freddy versus Jason.
But the
That's
most
not a
recent
nightmare
one is
movie.
the remake.
The crossover movies don't count.
Well,
Yeah,
New
but-
Nightmare is a completely different thing.
I kind of see what Robert's saying. I mean, like Freddy's in that movie.
But even then,
It's more of
that's
It's part of the franchise.
that's almost a decade later.
No, like that's a good point. And you're right. Like New Nightmare didn't do well, so they left it alone for a bit.
I could see Reanimator getting an interesting remake because that, like the Elijah Wood Maniac remake, it's not getting the big Hollywood horde out. Yeah, Platinum Dunes remake. Thank God they're done with those. You know,
Yeah, thank God.
they made there was 2 of those that I like, and the rest sucked. Maybe 3. I would have to rewatch Amityville.
I'd have to see more, but yeah, most of them were not good. And the thing
Final
with
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, real quick, the thing with Reanimator is like I think there is a remake in there that's serious and more scary that works, but you'd really have to put in the effort to pull it off, and I don't trust that they would. So
I
it's
don't
fine.
want that. Just what works about Reanimator is that it's funny. But anyway, the final thing I want to say on this before we move back to this movie is if that would be a fascinating video to do like a retrospective on those Platinum Dunes era from like 03 to 2010.
But that means I have to
We should
watch
do a
all of
ranking.
them.
Yeah, we should do a ranking and watch all of them.
I would
That
be
means I
down.
have to watch the Nightmare movie again.
Yeah.
Oh, you and Robert can do that.
No, you are legally obligated to appear.
Yeah, you signed the
damn it.
papers.
But anyway, so they destroyed the machine, which, or not the machine, the fuse box, which turns the whole power back off. Turns the machine off, and then Jeffrey Combs is bald now for some reason.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't quite understand what was happening there.
Well, I think like all the hair on his body was just burned off. I think that's at least what the intention is, because
Like
he has
getting
burns. I mean, he has burns all over the body. I think the hair was just like I don't know how worm interdimensional physics work.
Well, why the hell not? Why didn't you do your research?
I'm just saying that was I thought that was the implication. That's why he's bald now.
You were supposed to do research on interdimensional worms in digestive tracts. No, that now that you mention it, though, that could be the idea, like the stomach acid, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's when they decide to leave, and then we have that weird dominatrix scene with Barbara Crampton. We know that got Noah going, but you know. I'm sorry, no, I had to. I'm sorry. And then they, Bubba's like, no, we have to leave. And then we get to the worst scene in the movie. Bubba dies, and it's very sad.
No.
That honestly got this movie like a 0 out of 5. Like you can't do Ken Foree like that.
He died in a pretty
Very
gruesome way too.
Yeah, horrifying. Like there's just like pieces of him left.
Okay, so this will circle back to that point. But it's funny how like with any other character, it's like, dude, just get out of there, just screw them. But it does help that he's what, like a cop. So, like he can't just ditch them. Like he is obligated, even if he has to carry them out. So he is just kind of stuck with whatever wacky shenanigans Barbara Crampton is up to, and it's like we gotta go. Like I can't just leave you guys. But there's a weird thing with lighting in this movie. Not the awesome pink neon lighting, but
this
there's a scene early on
screaming for a 4K HDR remaster.
I agree.
Screaming.
There's a scene early on when our trio first arrive at the house and they're walking in. Ken Fore's joking, and then he trips and falls. And immediately think, oh, he's clumsy. Like that's the joke. And then it's like, oh no, it's supposed to be like pitch black because then they turn on their flashlights and they're like, oh, where did Jeffrey Combs go? He just disappeared. Like, so the scene is telling you that it's supposed to be pitch black, but it's like way too well lit. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but it's like, I'm like, oh, I guess it's supposed to be the dark, but I didn't realize that. And then later during Ken Fore's death scene, it's like what they're going for is, I think like the light from the flashlight's supposed to be warding off the creatures, but then he gets attacked with them because he doesn't have the light on himself. It's really weird, and I don't know if any of these things bothered you guys. Just with the lighting.
The main question, I didn't really catch a lot of that. The main question I had at certain points during the big, Fareed death scene is what the hell is happening? Like they're attacking Jeffrey Combs and Barbara Crampton and not really doing anything. And
well, they are biting him. I mean, there are scars,
Okay. So
but they go through him very quickly.
Then he pulls out a flashlight, shines it, and they move away from him or from them. And then he like drops it somehow and it shines somewhere else. And so they go after him. It's kind of awkwardly edited in shots. Like it just cuts to a shot of the flashlight. And you hear him going, oh my God, no. And then they attack him. It's very awkward. Like I wasn't quite sure what the idea was there.
Yeah, I think it's mostly just copy editing.
Yeah. That's why we need the unrated cut. It'll fix the editing. That whole minute of footage that they put back in.
It's a good minute.
Yeah,
we'll
get
to
on
it.
The 4K. This is even on 4K.
I didn't find one. Apparently, Scream Factory does have a Blu-ray with the unrated cut. I don't know if it's still in print, but this movie is screaming for a proper 4K, like Dolby Vision HDR remaster with all the like purple and pink and red and.
Arrow should get on that.
Yeah, come on, Arrow. What are you waiting for? So our boy Bubba is dead. And then we get to the hospital. Where's my next big question? So they have Barbara Crampton in captivity, and they are in prison, in handcuffs or whatever. And they think that now she's gone crazy. And the nurse just jumps to electroshock therapy.
Yeah, the conflict between that nurse and Barbara Crampton seemed a little forced, even from the beginning.
Well, so I didn't mind that there was conflict there, but this is a nurse that is all about the rules and the book by the book. That's why she dislikes Barbara Crampton. So she's going to potentially break those rules by sending someone she doesn't like to electroshock therapy.
She really just hates her.
Apparently.
Well, that's definitely when. Now, is she a doctor or a nurse? I don't.
Maybe she's
remember. I think she's a doctor because she talks down to the other nurses.
Yeah, that is when she crosses the line into villainy, where it's like, oh, you are doing electric shock just because you have a grudge against this person. And I mean, it is established at the start that she already doesn't like Barbara Crampton's character and her research and what she's been doing to patients. And to be fair, she is proven a bit right in that her patient, Jeffrey Combs, is now considerably worse than he was at the start. So she has a point, but jumping straight to electroshock just out of a personal grudge, it's like, okay, that is like, now you are Nurse Ratched from Cuckoo's Nest. You are a villain now.
She talks about Barbara Crampton abusing her patients, but then she goes right to, oh, let's give this person electroshock therapy. It's kind of hypocritical.
Yeah, it's not to help her.
Yeah, exactly.
Austin asks who would win in a fight, Reanimator, From Beyond, The Color Out of Space, The Thing, Sutter Kane, or Hellboy. Or
Probably
The Blob.
Probably Sutter Kane.
I have no idea.
Have you guys seen Color Out of Space?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
we reviewed it.
I think that's gonna win.
Yeah, we
I think
reviewed
that
it.
probably
I think
wins.
it's pretty
Yeah.
I think that's winning. Like that's pretty terrifying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but Sutter Kane
like that movie.
controls reality.
Yeah, no, okay.
But,
I guess you got me there.
Have you guys seen In the
So
Mouth
does
of
The
Madness?
I have not.
I have to rewatch it.
Dude,
Because
that's my
I
favorite
was-
Carpenter flick. It's so
It's on the
good.
watch list.
But anyway, yeah, I thought that was strange. And I guess it's just to kind of bring full circle because Barbara Crampton's character has a story about how her dad had schizophrenia, and they ended up giving him shock therapy, and he turned into a vegetable. So I have a question because I'm not a history guy. Were they doing shock therapy in the 80s? Because I always associate that with like the 60s or earlier.
According to movies, yes.
According to this movie, I have no idea, but they suggested doing it in this movie, which came out in the 80s. So,
Well, the only other example I can think of is Return to Oz, but that is a period piece. So, I mean, that is to that
Mhm.
movie's credit, set decades before this. But yeah, I'm sure if it was a practice, it was done very rarely and probably in only certain facilities. But I don't actually know.
Since you guys are frauds that didn't do your research, ignore the fact that I'm also a fraud and didn't do my research.
you didn't do your research. So stop projecting.
ECT use declined in the 1960s and 70s, but revived starting in the early 80s. During the years since, there have been a growing number of positive portrayals, often in patients' memoirs like Fisher's. So it kind of ebbed and flowed.
Isn't there electroshock therapy in a Requiem for a Dream? And that's way later than this.
I haven't seen that movie, so I'm not sure.
I also haven't seen it.
messed up.
Austin adds, or the Ghostbusters, they'll bust the color.
Yeah.
I'd like to see Ray and Peter Venkman go insane living with the color.
Oh God.
No, but even if they didn't do electroshock therapy in the 90s, I think it kind of works for this movie because it's loosely based on a Lovecraft thing, and it's kind of going for that older, not really an old aesthetic, but just kind of that like old classic horror sensibilities, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I kind of buy it in the world of this movie.
Yeah, I mean, there's 80s stuff in this movie where, like, it's clearly of the decade it was made. Like, it's not trying to hide that, but at the same time, it's not like as overtly 80s as other 80s movies.
Right.
You know, like it's a little timeless, or at least like kind of sketchy with when it's supposed to be.
No, for sure. Yeah, I don't really mind it. I just, other than the fact that it's such an odd, like,
It's very extreme.
Yeah, it's such an extreme choice. So then we get. We also forgot to mention, Jeffrey Combs' little thing.
Yeah, his pineal gland is growing so much that it bursts out of his forehead, and he has a little forehead penis.
The snake coming out of his hip forehead. The snake man.
And he starts eating brains
and eyeballs.
I didn't really get why he was going for eyeballs. Is there a reason for that?
There is a lore reason for that.
Is there a lore reason,
actually,
or is he stupid?
Are you guys referring to the scene when he attacks the evil nurse doctor lady and starts biting on her face?
Yeah.
Well, he also does that to two other people.
Okay, so I don't know if this applies to the other scene, but with hers, this is where some of that 1 minute of cut footage is in the unrated cut. And I first saw this clip, so I think I first heard about this movie was probably the Red Letter Media review on it from a few years ago, because they reviewed this and Reanimator in the same video. And there's a clip in it that was like, whoa, I don't remember seeing that in the movie when I rewatched
Okay.
when I finally watched the movie or rewatched the video. And so the extended version of that scene is when he attacks the doctor lady. He bites her eye, pulls it out, spits her eye out, and then goes back to munching on her face and sucking out her brain. So that is the full context
Oh,
for
okay.
what is going on in that scene. He is biting their eyeballs, ripping and
So-
spitting them out, and then going for the brain.
Right,
that
God
is the
damn.
extra
Because
context.
you see him eat a brain before that, so he doesn't
Yep.
want their eye; he wants their brain. Okay.
And that's the scene where she is played like sympathetic. Usually in a movie like this,
Yeah.
she'd scream or leave, but she seems like a real good doctor who's just trying to
Well,
like
Who
talk
ordered
and be
shock
calm.
therapy on someone she doesn't
Yeah.
like?
Well, I think it's consistent because she's sympathetic towards
Towards
Jeffrey
him,
Combs, who she believes has schizophrenia.
Insane,
And,
yeah.
yeah. So
I just like that she's a bit nuanced. She's not like a
Right.
cartoonishly evil
I,
villain.
I
She's
don't
only
know. She
cartoonishly
loses
evil.
any sympathy for me when she goes to shock therapy as a
Right,
first resort. I have to emphasize this. She sent someone to shock therapy for no reason.
No, I don't feel bad for what
Right.
happens to her.
But his forehead
but it's
snake
messed up.
his forehead snake is disgusting. I was really that was one of the things in this movie that made me uncomfortable. Is just that image of it like writhing around.
Well, and one of the not great effects is when you see him from the pineal gland's perspective, and everything just has that filter on it.
Oh yeah, it looks
It,
like
like,
the
looks like
Predator
crap.
vision.
Yeah, but way crappier. It's just
Yeah.
like a weird color filter on VHS is how it looks. But
He's like,
this is where the movie. Oh, go on.
that's just funny because like when he can finally see it from that perspective, and he's like, "Oh, I see." It's like his third eye is open, and it's just
He
like,
says it's so beautiful. It's like,
yeah,
no, it's
he's
not.
like, it's so beautiful that you see it, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. But this is that section of the movie though where there is more of that clear visual distinction of when that's sticking out, that's when that part of his self has taken over and he's like munching on brains. But then when it retreats and is inside himself, that's when he's like normal Jeffrey Combs, like, oh no, this is bad. Like, we need to stop this. So that's when that push and pull becomes a lot more like literally visually clear for this section of the movie, like when he's controlling, when he's not.
Yeah, and I think that works pretty well.
And so all of this is to lead up to the third act, which is shocker, back in the house. She puts a bomb on the resonator, which is, I think this is where you can argue she is now the sole protagonist. Jeffrey Combs has kind of lost himself.
For a minute.
Bubba is dead, and she's somewhere between sane and insane.
Yeah, no, I think I would argue he kind of takes center stage the most, even more than Jeffrey. I think Jeffrey Combs's character arc is kind of over at this point. Because the only thing he does left is die, really.
Well, he died. Well, like he gets his head ripped off, but then comes back and victorious as like a final little hero moment. Like we were talking. So like he does play a part in like the final fight. And again, this is where I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because he's killed and taken into that dimension, presumably gonna turn into what Pretorius has turned into. But instead, like his real self comes back and he has hair and he's like in Pretorius and is fighting him. And there's a great bit where he's melting and he's a little skull, but the skull bites him and is still alive. It's a great little puppet. So
is it because she bit off his Pretorius gland?
His Pretorius gland.
Or his pineal gland? I don't fucking know what words are anymore.
So I'm just saying that he does come back strangely.
He does.
For that extra little hero redemption moment.
Yeah, but it's clear that by this point the protagonist is what's her name?
Crampton. She has more to do. I think.
Yeah, for this part.
She kind of gets more of like the action.
I love that Robert agreed with me after just trying to argue with me.
Well, my argument was more that like there's still dual protagonists. I'm more with what Torgo is saying. Like they're dual protagonists.
No,
more than anything.
No,
they are dual protagonists. I think they're dual protagonists for most of the movie, but Barbara Crampton kind of gets the She gets the most to do at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just being an asshole now.
You're wrong.
And then
Robert.
why couldn't Kin Foray come back and burst out of Pretorius and
Right?
like, rip him in half?
Give
Like that was
Bubba that
amazing.
moment. Give Bubba that moment.
Why is Bubba just
Or
dead?
what if Bubba was like the ants now and they like swarmed and ate
Yeah.
Pretorius?
Yeah, he comes back. He's like, "You can't kill me, motherfuckers."
Well, and also there's the great bit where Jeffrey Combs ties her up, and then like the machine is on, and like the little floating worm things come on, and she has to like get their attention to bite off the chains. Like that's a cool bit, but the movie is a little inconsistent. Where it's like, okay, is this Jurassic Park T-Rex logic? Like Jeffrey Combs says earlier, like don't move, but I don't know. That feels a little inconsistent when like just being frozen still, like when they can't see you or when they can't see you. I don't know. It's a nitpick.
Yeah, definitely.
Not like when the creatures can see you and when they can't.
No, but
Yeah, that was
I love that final fight. Wonky special effects in some shots are not. And then that maniac. She blew it all up.
She blew it
Damn
up.
you. Damn you all to hell. And the stupid neighbor lady comes back and doesn't die. That's my big.
Yeah.
Why does Kin Foray die? But not the worst pet owner I have ever seen in a movie. Or top 10 worst.
It was
But
weird.
She's
weird
standing there with her
because,
dog with an open window and just lets the dog jump out and is like, oh, and then walks and then leaves. And then it's like, oh, my dog. And complete, like, she sucks. And she
Well,
doesn't
even
die. And it makes me sad.
Even at the beginning, like, why do you take your dog with you to the house? Just go yourself.
Yeah. Terrible character.
And I really like Barbara Crampton's acting in that final shot where she's like, it ate him, and she's somewhere between laughing and crying.
Yeah, it's just great ending. Just so good.
Perfect ending.
And
Although,
to me, oh, go on.
do you think maybe it would have been a better ending if they'd all died?
No, because we're right back to where we started. We have an insane person who's probably going to be locked up in a mental institution because no one's going to believe her. So it's just full circle. Like we leave where the prologue leaves of a crazy person. Except this time the machine's completely destroyed. So
it's
he's probably just going to be locked up forever.
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
Yeah.
No, I didn't think about that. That is a good point. No, yeah, I think that is kind of a perfect ending.
And how do you sequel? Yeah, don't.
Yeah, just don't. The house is destroyed. The machine is destroyed. Just leave it there. All right. Robert, do you have any other thoughts or anything you want to talk about before we move into final thoughts?
Just that with that final scene when it's a really awesome hero moment where she jumps out the window right as the bomb goes off, but then her knee is completely shattered and it's horrifying. It's like there's nothing in Reanimator that's like that painful and disturbing. I think that's the most disturbing effect of the movie, not the gooey fun stuff. Like that hurts. Like that is some Evil Dead pencil in an ankle type moment where he's just like, like I feel this sucks and it hurts, and it's really convincing.
I was cringing at that part. Like her bone is all the way out, and I'm just like, oh god, yeah.
Because usually in a movie like this, an action hero doesn't get an injury like that. That's why it takes you off guard. Where it's like, oh crap, reality.
I was gonna say that's why this is a horror movie, not an action movie.
Yeah.
But even in horror movies, I rarely see like protagonists take that type of damage from an explosion.
That's the end of the movie.
Except for dying. Yeah.
Noah, anything else you want to bring up or before we move on to final thoughts?
I think we covered most of it. So, we pretty much talked about everything I wanted to, so we can move into final thoughts if you want.
Okay. Robert, final thoughts and score out of 5.
It's really fun. It's really good gooey stuff. If anyone's squeamish,
oh no, gooey stuff.
Yeah, well, it's appropriate for this movie. But if anyone's squeamish about 2 minutes of nudity or a sex scene in a movie, maybe watch this movie or not, or do. And
I was gonna say,
have it freak you out because oh boy, is this not a mainstream?
I've heard it both ways.
Because a lot of people are weirdly prudish about certain things, and this is not for them.
There's been more of a conversation about like getting rid of sex scenes in movies. It's a little
Yeah,
strange.
that's what happened.
Yeah.
Just go watch Poor Things. That movie has enough sex scenes to last you the entire year.
You can, just be traumatized from that alone.
Give them heart attacks. No, this is also, we were talking about this earlier, just a really good way. And how do you turn a short story into a full film? Because where a lot of those usually mess up is just taking a short story and just stretching that to an hour and a half. Like, I don't know, maybe some Dr. Seuss books or something. This plays it smart where, as far as I know, the prologue is more or less the short story with just Jeffrey Combs. And like, there's still differences. I haven't read it, but like the prologue is more or less a short story. And then it just keeps going and tells the whole story from there. It's like a movie that I'm the only person here who's going to compare this to, The Living Daylights, a Bond film, where that just takes an Ian Fleming Bond short story, pretty much adapts that for the opening, and then just has the story carry on from there as the catalyst. And this is just a really good example of how you do that. So points for this, for not like just wasting your time for a half hour. And in the first 2 minutes, you know what this movie is, and it's a great time.
Yeah.
And
sure.
those are my final thoughts. And my score, I think I'm on a 4. I'm not on a 5. I like this movie a lot, and I don't want to criticize it for like not being something else, but like as far as science fiction B movies like this go, you have something like David Cronenberg's The Fly, and that I would give a 5 to. Like that does this and
Absolutely.
just a lot more, like as a science fiction film. Like this is a science fiction film, but it's not that concerned with the science in themes, or at least as much as that movie is. This is more of just a fantasy, gooey, weird, fun time, and it's very good, and that's what it is. Like I don't want to criticize it for not being more, but as it is, like it's really good. I like it, so I think I'm giving this a 4. It's a great time. I'd recommend it.
The Day
Yeah,
Ghost
let's see you
says, if anything, more movies should have sex scenes. The Living Daylights. Austin says 4 out of 5 for me. Austin, you should just come on the show.
I agree on all points, Austin.
Noah, final thoughts and then your score, good sir.
All right. Yeah, overall, I thought this movie was a great time. It does a great job of making the audience cringe. I thought the effects were great, and the body horror was wonderful. Wonderful. It's some of the best body horror I've seen. Not quite on par with something like The Thing or The Fly or like anything I've seen from Cronenberg, but it's still, I think it holds its own, and it's still pretty good in that regard. I would say I'd have to rewatch Reanimator, but I think just thinking about it right now, I think I do prefer Reanimator because of the more campy tone. At the same time, I appreciate that this movie isn't just a copy of Reanimator, and it does have more of that like drastic, serious, kind of more of like the Lovecraftian cosmic horror feeling. Like I find this movie like a lot more disturbing in that regard. Just like that feeling of dread is more present than in something like Reanimator. But I think I'd also give it a 4 out of 5, which is, I think, what I give Reanimator. So they're basically on par for me.
Huh? The Dago says also it must be noted that Stuart Gordon wrote Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which is really, really funny. Because I loved that movie as a kid.
Well, he was gonna direct it, but could not stand the Disney executives. And just walked off and just gave him the script. Like he's not a studio director guy, but when he's left alone, he makes good movies. So I still like that movie. I think it turned out well. So I
just don't think he would have directed a movie that Disney would have put out either way.
Yeah,
it would have been very different.
Did Disney fire him after he suggested like turning Rick Moranis into like a Lovecraftian horror?
Well, I think he just didn't get as far as I know, like he did make a couple of like kids or family movies. Like I don't think he made movies like this, but I need to see a lot more of this guy's work. But I think there's at least one kids movie around that time that he did make. So like he could shift genre. And I don't know. Also unrelated final thought, but Color Out of Space is another Lovecraft movie. That's a lot more recent. It's not from these filmmakers, but if you want a good Lovecraft trilogy, I think you watch Reanimator, this and that. I think that'd be a decent
Yeah.
trilogy watching back to back. So yeah, have a good time with some Lovecraft stuff.
So my final thoughts are: if you like you like really cool special effects, just weird ideas on film, H.P. Lovecraft, or even if you like Reanimator, watch this movie. Show it to your friends and your enemies, whoever will pay attention.
Maybe not your parents.
Show it to your parents too.
If your parents like this kind of thing, why not?
I am gonna be slightly above you. I'm not quite at a full 5, but I'm gonna go 4.5. I'm kind of in the middle between a 4 and a 5.
That's fine.
I do need to rewatch Reanimator because there's a lot of things in that movie that I do prefer. As Noah or anyone that knows me can attest, I love schlock and camp and horror.
Yeah.
So I will be curious to revisit Reanimator. But no, this is a great time. It'd be, you know what? It'd be 5 stars if Bubba didn't die. Okay, Bubba deserves better.
Justice for Ken.
Justice for Bubba.
Justice for Bubba.
All right, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Noah, Robert, as always, it's been a pleasure watching and discussing this movie. So in 2 weeks from now, we will be doing Aliens. And then after that, we will finally start Flanagan. We don't have like a word for it because we don't do 4 videos a month anymore. We do 2 videos a month.
Flanagan is fun.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's not going to be called that.
We may not even call it anything, but after Aliens, you will see an increase of videos on Mike Flanagan Works because Noah is a fraud and hasn't seen a lot of them. And Flanagan is my favorite modern horror director. And I've wanted to do stuff, especially on his Netflix stuff. So right now we're looking at doing Oculus, Hill House, Midnight Mass, and Dr. Sleep.
Dr. Sleep.
I also suggested Gerald's Game, but I don't know if we'll get to that one.
We will put that on the maybe because we want to do Follow House of Usher at some point, but not like right now. So maybe that's like wave 2 of our Flanagan
saga.
Yeah. But I do want to do that because that's a good movie. We'll see how it goes. I have a couple other ideas that I want to do. What I'd really like to do, and this is the final thing I'll say before we wrap up, is we all pick some movies and let our audience decide what we review in 1 week. See how that goes.
That's a good idea. Have a community poll. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Because I do throw those up from now and then, and we could all write, feedback mostly on game streams. But I thought that'd be cool for movies. So the Aliens will be a review, I believe. Yeah, we're gonna do a review, and then Oculus will be a review because Noah's never seen it. That's not something you can really just like blind commentate. I don't think.
Yeah, I'd rather just watch that and then talk.
But then Dr. Sleep will be a commentary because we've already reviewed it on the channel and we've seen it. Yeah. So that'll be a good commentary. But next week we will be back on Gotham City Bulletin, our Batman channel, doing our first non-Batman Bat book, Batgirl Year 1. No, sorry.
Are we doing
next week? No, sorry.
Yeah.
Next week is Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
Commentary.
Commentary.
Then Batgirl Year 1.
Sorry, I forgot about that. Yeah, so next week is the Dark Knight Returns commentary. We'll be doing. Are we doing it the split version, or are we doing the like combined?
Currently on Max, it's just streaming in 2 parts. So I think we'll do it depending on how it's streaming. So we might just do both parts separately. But that's at least how it's currently streaming.
We'd have to double check if it's still even on Max because I think they purged a lot of stuff recently.
I will check right now.
But yeah, maybe I feel like most people have it in 2 parts, so maybe we'll just do it that way. I'll be watching my deluxe edition version, but I can pause it in between. So
it is not on Max currently. I also have the deluxe edition, so that's not a problem for me. Is that going to be a problem for you?
I actually don't have the deluxe edition, but I can get it.
What the hell is wrong with you?
What? I have it in both parts.
Well, if you have both parts,
if you have both parts, that would actually be better. You can give us a reference when to stop.
Oh, exactly. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. So we'll do that as one long commentary, but we'll take like
There'll
a
be an
5.
intermission.
There'll be an
There'll be an
intermission between parts. But yeah, and then as always, Robert and I will be back Thursday with The Last of Us. We finally we made some progress. There will be no game streams this weekend because this weekend is WrestleMania, and fuck y'all, I'm watching WrestleMania. No.
Fair enough.
But yeah, we'll see you guys next time. We've rambled enough. Have a great night, everybody.